Welcome, everybody. My name is George Diaz, and I bring you another episode of Transforming Small Business Thinking. My guest today is Brian Keith. Brian is someone I've known for a long time. Brian Keith, the name of his business is Redbeard for obvious reasons. And he presented something, at a booster presentation that I attended a couple weeks back, and I go, I need to get this guy on the program. He's got his impact framework, which, it's interesting, and we'll talk about this in a moment, but when I know Brian as a fellow Infusionsoft consultant. And so here he's talking about this impact thing, and I'm going, wow, this is a big change from the message I had heard from him before. And when I saw his webinar, I go, this is something I think a lot of people could benefit from. So, instead of me just talking a lot, let's have Brian, introduce yourself, Brian. Again, thank you for coming along, and then tell us, how did you get started in this?
Well, I got started by doing, I actually think it was fourth grade, and there was a cupcake sale where the teacher said, here's $5, which is a lot of money in those days, make it into $10. You can spend whatever you want.
You're going way back. Okay.
Well, entrepreneurship, it's a thing that I've been interested in for a while. With Infusionsoft, I started back in 2012 when my mom was evaluating it and saying, hey, my friends are starting to use this. Should I use it? And then I've spent since then alternately having wild successes or banging my head against a wall, trying to figure out what works and what does not work. And seeing that, I've been inside some really successful companies, getting to see all the numbers, their campaigns, what are they doing, and some that are not successful, or really successful companies that have huge flops of campaigns. Why is it that we're so varied in our results?
Gotcha.
And so the impact framework is my answer to that. And it's actually one of these things that sort of showed up in a dream where I realized, oh my goodness, I have to write this down. It's finally become clear that if you look at it through this lens, then some of the mystery goes away. I think about one of the most dangerous things that humans do, which is fly fighter planes. And my family has a lot of pilots in it, and there's always a checklist for everything. That you don't just wing it, you go through your checklist.
Right.
And even if you're a master, you go through a checklist because it's too important not to go through a checklist. And so I started thinking, okay, well, if we had a way to diagnose what we were doing, where we could say, okay, I'm doing this well, this is good enough, this one I'm totally failing on, and we could actually go through a checklist, then maybe we would have more success in our businesses and do a greater impact for the people and for our next generations.
Right. Now, for those of you that are watching, I don't want you to think that this is only an Infusionsoft thing, because it absolutely is not. This can apply to anyone. For those of us that are in, the Infusionsoft space or the Keep space, it makes sense because we're about this marketing. But if you're doing everything from Facebook marketing, paid advertising, SEO, this all applies.
One of my favorite things to do is look at any marketing success I see in the world and then say, if they had followed the impact framework, would that have made sense? And the answer is always yes. That it's not the only way to approach looking at success. It's just one, because there's so many different ways. There's a bazillion books on your shelf and on mine about how to succeed. But if we look at any celebrity or really any politician or any CEO, really anyone we admire, they have a either exclusive, like a straightforward, or they have an intuitive grasp of these parts of the impact framework. And this is my attempt to just go describe that in a way that makes it accessible to those of us who are not leaders of nations or huge companies.
Cool. So let's, why don't we jump into this? Let's kind of, because I very quickly saw it and go, gosh, this is something I'd like to learn more about. Let's
do it. Okay, can you see my screen okay?
I can.
So here's the two things of the impact framework. Up top, you've got the 3 pillars, and at the bottom, you have the cycle. Let's talk about the cycle first. One of the mistakes we make is we try to get people to go buy everything we have and make some radical change in their life immediately after shaking their hand. Or alternately, a mistake we make is we talk to people in a very casual, gentle, I don't want to sell you anything way for a decade. We never make a sale. The point of the impact cycle is to recognize that if you're going to make a long-term change in someone's life, first you have to get them to take some kind of discrete action. And before that, you have to have some kind of inspiration behind that. So the example I like to use is inspiration might be you see someone Instagram post and you think to yourself, oh yeah, I definitely want to do more yoga. That looks like something I should do, or I should eat more salad. Simple, like, yeah, I should do that. And then the action would be you actually do something, like you actually go eat the salad. You actually do one different thing. You read one of your blog posts, and so you do one thing differently. And then the change is when you're doing actions repeatedly over a long period of time, years or an entire lifetime. And when I've done this content, a couple of different webinars, and I ask people, what are you strongest on? What are you weakest on? And something like 2/3 of people, of business owners, say they're strongest on the inspiration or the action, but they're really dubious about the long-term change. And then a few people say, oh yeah, change, I'm really great at creating long-term change. Just getting people inspired or to take the little actions, I don't know what I'm doing.
So you have people like that? Because I mean, when I went through this, I was kind of following along and I go, yeah, I can inspire people. I can get them to take, I want to say the initial action, but real effective long-term change. I mean, that's, it takes a lot more work or creativity, whatever.
Yeah, most people are in your boat, as am I, that if we could create long-term change and we could prove that we were doing so, we would all be bazillionaires, because we would say, hey, I created this long-term change. You want this? Give me your money. It's done. It's easy. Way easier to inspire somebody by posting something on Facebook or Facebook Live or an email or a webinar. If someone's on this webinar and they're saying, yeah, this is cool, I should do this, that would be the inspiration part. But then even to take the first action step, we need something additional, and we need to sort of push them in the direction of going where we want them to go. And that's where we come up here to the pillars. So let's go hop into that. The first pillar is going to be message. Message is what you're saying, platform is how you're saying it, and tribe is who you're saying it to. So right now, the message is the actual content of this webinar, the platform is how you're delivering it, and then the tribe is who you're delivering it to, including all the expectations you've set in advance that created the tribe that's listening to this content. And so if you have a tribe that's well identified and really knows itself, which we'll get into in a minute, and that is supported by a good platform, then the message can really cause both inspiration but also lead to action. And then your platform, when that's well set up, encourages people to take individual actions to go and make some kind of long-term change in their lives. And it might be use this framework all the time, or it might be, wow, I got inspired by this podcast, and then I decided to take actual action based on it, and I'm going to listen to it every single episode, because good things happen. I listen to one guy, Dave Asprey. I love his podcast. Whenever I'm in the car and not doing something, I'm like, great, I'm going to go listen to Dave Asprey, because I listen to this guy, and then I do some things differently occasionally, and then my life gets better.
And so that's real change, right?
Let me tell you some changes. We mostly use red lights at night in our house because it's better on your eyes and you sleep better. We have an air filter that's crazy good that makes our house way cleaner. Just actual changes that have dramatic impact on my life. And he's a biohacker, so the changes we're selling to our audience might not be quite that physical level of extreme. Yeah. But even if you get to the point where your marketing campaigns succeed 10% more often because you go through the checklist that is the impact framework, 10% is a lot over time.
No, but I mean, for example, this is, if I look at it like, hey, I'm trying to lose 25 pounds, you can kind of inspire me to try something. I can go take action, so I'm good for a week, but change where long-term I'm keeping my weight where it needs to be, that's the real, litmus test of success, right?
Yeah. And that's where having a good platform comes in. And you and I know Infusionsoft and Keep as one platform. There's a bazillion platforms out there to choose from. Less important than the specific tool you're choosing is, are you hitting these main parts of the platform? So let's hop into some detailed action steps here. On the message side of things, and I have a PDF that goes into all this, which you're going to get the link to go and get that. So if you're watching this, no need to be scribbling notes, you're going to get all this. For message, I think there's three things that matter. The first is what you're saying true, which we might say, well, obviously, but as you and I know, I'm sure we both worked with people where we thought, this message is not as true as it could be, or it's not truly authentic, right?
Right.
And so I think that's the first part. That's the first part of the first pillar is it actually true? I think if we just all adhere to this, then we would go and the world would be a better place. Second off, is it truly useful? Is it actually useful to people? And then third off, is it profitable to use it? If you are missing any one of these three things, your message is going to fall flat compared to what it could be. And then on the right, there's the individual aspects. So the framework says, okay, so it describes, okay, what does benefit mean in the context of a profitable message? So you can look at what you're doing and what this definition is and say, am I totally matching that, or is that a weak spot?
Okay, so let me ask you here. So I get the true, is it useful is like, okay, is it useful for me based on what my needs are? Now, profitable is, can I offer this out and sell it at a price point that makes me, makes it worthwhile? Is that?
Yes, it's that, and it's also for, is the message really profitable to the end user?
So, so it's from their perspective.
It's from both. So things can be useful but not profitable, where it's something that you might say, there's this thing that I could do, but I don't care enough to actually do it. And it would make my life better, but I don't really care. So for example, eating salad. How many times should you be eating salad per week or per day? You could have some people out there saying a story about you should eat salad twice a day. And it could be true and useful. But if they don't sell you on the profitability, it doesn't matter how useful you know it is. How many of us walk on cell phones next to our heads and we know it's probably not healthy for us, but we still do it? Or how big are Coca-Cola sales? Huge. It's not actually making us healthier, but we're like, I'm not going to change.
Right. But in that case, the benefit of the Coca-Cola is I feel so much better, the sparkle, the bubbles, whatever your thing is.
It's an effective sales pitch, sadly.
No, but I'm saying, for example, I'm not a soda lover just because I don't like it. But, my wife and kids, we have a ton of soft drinks, most of them, the diet ones. But there's a perceived benefit, whether I'm gaining, forget about the weight, I like it, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe you could convince them to eat RC Cola or, the store brand. But I guess the perceived benefit is I get physical pleasure from it, right?
And that's
so in that case, it is profitable to them.
Yeah, and that's a real thing. And so if you're competing against Coca-Cola, either because you have a different soft drink company or you're trying to compete with what your family's consuming, you might say, okay, it doesn't matter that drinking water it doesn't matter that it's true that that's better for you. It doesn't matter that it's useful and keeps you healthier. Those two are irrelevant without the profit part, where it has to be, what is the story? What's the narrative you're handing them? And even the narrative of, you'll live longer if you drink water instead of soda. That's good, but you also need the benefit and the price there as well. And the price in this case is, what are they giving up? If they're giving up that pleasure, your price better be, or the benefit better be so strong that when the price is, I'll give up this pleasure. So we can use this even talking about soft drinks for your family. Gotcha. And if you hit 8 of these 9 aspects, but you miss price and you don't talk about the costs they're suffering by not drinking soft drinks, your sales message will fall apart. And you will discover next year they're drinking as much as they are this year. Yeah. And for them, it's soft drinks. For me, it could be chocolate. For you, it could be something else. We all have things like that in our personal lives and then also in our business lives where we have all these different things we're choosing about.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
So let's look at the next one here. So platform is how you're saying it. This is one that you and I are particularly well versed in.
And you said how you're saying, but it's like what vehicles or what mediums are you using to get the word out, right? To get the message.
Yeah. I was asking on one of these webinars, how many different mediums, which is one of the parts of how you're delivering your message, how many mediums are you using in your primary sales campaign? And most of us said 1 or 2. One woman had, I think, 7. She's my hero because she was actually using 7 different media to talk about her main offer in her main campaign. Most of us are only using 1 or 2.
So let's say, if I'm sending my message out on email, I've got a blog. All my blogs go on Facebook, LinkedIn, info. I guess you're using social media as a unit, right?
I think it can be useful depending on who you are in your message to break it down a little bit more. If you're only sharing stuff on Facebook, but LinkedIn would be a valuable audience and you're skipping that, then it's a good place to go and say, okay, I'm choosing it. And it's fine to skip things as long as you're doing it intentionally. If you're intentionally not doing Instagram, that's great. You should just say, I'm not doing Instagram because.
No, right. And for example, I recently started doing Instagram because there were certain people that I wanted to reach, and I saw that they were very Instagram centric. Like there was a tribe that I thought I could reach. But for example, I've never done a podcast, but that might be another medium, right?
Yeah, and it's also about who you're talking to and the age of people. That older people do Facebook, younger people do Instagram, Snapchat, etc. So depending on who you're talking to, that's going to continue to change. So we have delivery, and then we have sales process, which some people don't pay enough attention to their sales process. And it's one of these areas there's so many tools out there, but fundamentally, do you actually have a funnel for what you're sharing? And this doesn't have to be necessarily give me cash. It could just be take some action. I need to encourage you to take some kind of action, to go from inspiration to taking action. Otherwise, I will never get you to make a long-term positive change. Technique is just all the sales techniques, the specific details that we read about in so many business books that are available. And the proof side of things is, do you actually have evidence that this thing works, and do you display it in a convincing fashion? Again, if you don't have proof and you do have people who've done the thing and they like it, and you're not including that, then you're disserving your customers. You should go add that in there.
Gotcha.
And then Ascension is the upsell thing, which just some different ideas about what you could upsell people to, either access to you or to other material, some kind of retention or subscription model, and then how well are you split testing what your Ascension is.
Okay, gotcha.
The idea here is just if you are looking at your platform, but then you don't have a way to change access, or you're only offering one kind of access, that's fine as long as you say, I only offer one kind of access because. If it's because I wasn't thinking about it, not a good answer. If you say, well, like for the Impact Academy, which is the membership site, course, community I'm building off this framework, right now, there's only one thing. It's the Impact Academy. There's only one price. You can only get it one way. Then there's 3 parts to it. There's no live events right now. There's a live webinar, but there's no live in-person events. That's going to show up once we get to a certain number of members.
Sure.
So I have a why, which is I want to gamify the growth of the Academy and also put out a reasonable amount of energy given how much return I'm getting. So it's going to be the Academy will get to choose when you hit a certain milestone, you'll get to choose, hey, do you want to get our own Slack channel, or do you want to have a live event show up, or do you want to have an affiliate program be added? And they'll get to choose. So I have my access is just going to be, like there's a reason why I'm saying I'm not doing this now. It's going to show up later, and here's why.
Makes sense. I got you.
One of my biggest mentor, Jermaine Griggs, when he sold his big entry automation clinic, this was 7 years ago now, you could either buy the basic thing, which was $2,000, or there was a high level thing, which was $15,000, and that was a mastermind, but it was also 2 15-minute phone calls, which you could take any time in the next year, as long as he wasn't sleeping or in church or dinner with his family. He was selling access. And he's you know Jermaine, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So 2 15-minute calls with him when you're stumped is insanely valuable. And he had a price tag that was appropriate for that.
Yeah, no, because the guy, I remember I voted for him in 2011 in Fusion, when it was called Infusion Con.
Yeah, Marketer of the Year.
Now, I know that because that was the first time, I had just purchased Infusionsoft, and I go, let me see what this little conference is about.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going, oh my gosh. I mean, this guy was selling piano lessons online in 2011.
Yeah.
The guy was way ahead of his time.
Brilliant. So for everybody watching this or listening to this, when you're thinking about access, the question is for all the different kinds of access, and there's a whole list, which will eventually develop some content around, here's all the different things you could offer. So you have that checklist, and you can say, I'm doing 1, 2, and 3. I'm not doing the rest of these. I'm going to do these ones over here later. Just think about, what are you offering for access? And if you aren't offering some kind, why not? Why are you not offering group coaching? And just, again, the checklist, you're looking through all your options. Let's go look at Tribe. This is the fun one. Platform is sort of obvious. There's a lot of books written about it. And sort of message too, clarifying your message. Tribe, I think we don't talk about enough.
By the way, now Tribe to me, and I told you when we were prepping for this, Tribe was intriguing to me because this is where I think I have work to do. So this is interesting.
And that's one of the interesting parts of the impact framework, is that if you ask any business owner of these 3 pillars, which are you strongest on, which are you weakest on, everybody has an answer. And it's different. I've asked this to 2 different groups of people, and people have different answers. So you might say Tribe. In my case, it's platform. And there's particular parts of platform that I'm weak on that I know, okay, this right here, if I fix this, my business will grow.
Well,
because I'm fine over here.
It's not even a skill shortfall. It's just a matter of what? Focus and attention to it, right?
Well, let's dive in, because I think that it's no fun when people in webinars present themselves to be perfect. Let's talk about platform, where let's see, it's under the, it actually was under Tribe. It was under the leadership part, this respect part right here. That was one thing for me. And then for delivery, frequency right here.
Well, I'll tell you what,
Because
let explain this, because you and I are talking about this, and I've got a little bit of insider knowledge. But so
well,
fill us in,
let me say exactly where I suck. According to the impact framework, which if I fix this, I'll make more money. On the message side, I'm pretty good to go. The things I talk about, people find useful, that's fine. On the platform side, this is my weakest area, and it has a lot to do with frequency of delivery. Specifically, if you say you want to get something from me, how often am I talking back to you about that? I wrote a book called The Plus This. It's 20 Easy Ways to Make Money with Plus This. It's in ebook form as well. So people are downloading the book. Now, how good is my nurture after they download a book? And as you said, I have no lack of understanding of the techniques. I've just not done the work to really go and develop the frequency that is appropriate. When someone says, I'm going to download your book. Now I have a few things, like I have an ability where you can go and get text messages every week for 10 weeks. That's not well integrated into, if you download the book, you immediately see that offer. Or I have a bunch of archives of webinars I've done for Plus This. I've been their webinar guy for 2 or 3 years, doing webinars for them almost every month.
Oh, wow.
I don't have an easy way to access that if you download the book. So I have things, but I've not connected them to the people who ask for, say, I'm interested in Plus This. It's not because I don't know how to do it. It's because this is my weakness. And the impact framework really makes that obvious, because if you look at these 9 things and you say, okay, well, and you can even say in delivery, which of these 3 are your weakest ones? And there's also offer. How often are you putting the appropriate offers in front of people at the appropriate point in your delivery? Well, obviously I should say, you've downloaded the ebook. Now let me go offer you a course on Plus This. Obviously, haven't built that yet. Why? I have great excuses. Let me tell you, they're very pretty. We all have great excuses, right? But this exposes and says, okay, so medium-wise, I'm mostly Facebook, tiny amount of LinkedIn, tiny amount of text, some email, but mostly Facebook. And I don't do Instagram because my focus is on Facebook, and I don't want to do Instagram poorly or YouTube poorly. So I mostly ignore those, and I mostly focus on Facebook, and I'm mostly in 4 Facebook groups, not on just general Facebook. Gotcha. So blinders, very intentional there. So I'm doing fine here. It's frequency and offer that are weak. I'm also weak on the ascension part of things, especially when you go back to the Plus This. Sure, you got my ebook for free, but then how am I giving you the opportunity to buy, to extend from free ebook to the next level where it's a course or something else? For retention, how am I giving you the choice to go continue to give me money to go learn more about Plus This and get better at that? And then the testing side of things, what is my testing setup like for upselling people from you got the ebook to now you're giving me money?
Gotcha.
So those are my weaknesses there, half of them apparently. Let's look at tribe. Let's go talk about the 3 branches here real quick. Self-identification is, do you recognize each other as being part of one group? You and I are both Keep certified partners, super easy. We're going to convention in a few weeks, the SuccessCon, where all the Keep certified partners and aficionados show up in one spot. We are in a room. We're probably wearing t-shirts. We know, like, hey, we're all us.
Yeah, we're all in the same Facebook groups and things like that.
You were talking earlier about tribe being an interesting area for you. One of your things is, how much do your people identify with each other? Or will they not recognize each other on the street or on Facebook because they're like, I don't know who that person is. They like Jorge stuff? Well, cool, but I don't know who they are. I don't know. And then the parts of that, so proximity is physically or online next to each other. Repetition is how often. If you're talking to somebody in the same Facebook group every day, then you feel very close because you're repetitive. And then recognition is just, do we see each other and we say, you're like me, I'm like you, we're the same person, we're the same kind of person. If you don't have one of these in your tribe, then that creates an opportunity to say, how can I do that better? Or if you're looking at your competition, you can look at, what are they doing that I'm not doing? If you say, okay, my competition, like, I'm as good as they are, but and I have great repetition and recognition, but I don't really have a good proximity. How can I change that? Well, you can have a live event, you could have group coaching, you could do Facebook Lives, you could do blah, blah, blah. You have a checklist now that says, if this is your problem, here's the answer to go and start and stop losing as much to your competition. Down here on shared values, this is, I think, the one we talk about the least. Business people get weird about talking about values or spirituality or what the good life is. And I think there's an opportunity for talking about that more. I've identified 3 different ways of looking at that. One is positive, which is, this is what we do. Here's how we do business. Either me and you and all of us in this community. a negative shared value, we don't do this kind of thing. We don't sell someone something they're not fulfilled and not give them their money back. And then aspirational, I think, is one of the most interesting, which is this is what should the world look like? If I say to you, the point of every entrepreneur, while making money is important, should be to make the world a better place for your great-great-grandchildren who you'll never meet. And if you're not doing that, you're not as good of an entrepreneur as you could be, even if you're very wealthy. That's aspirational value.
Gotcha.
And when we talk about that, we take things away from the dollars and cents plane into the moral plane. And what I say on webinars, not infrequently, is you have a sacred duty to make the world a better place, because you, by virtue of, and all the audience right now listening to this and watching this, you are already, in terms of humanity's ability to affect the future, you're already in the top 1%. The tools you have, the knowledge you have, it is up to you to go make the world a way better place for your great-great-grandchildren who you'll never meet. Because a lot of people, they don't have the time, they don't have the energy between work and bills, they have nothing extra. But you are watching this, you are listening to this, you have the chance to make the world a better place. So get out there and do it, and talk to your people about what that vision is. So you can say, here's my vision of the better world. Does that feel good to you? I think we just need to do that more.
Gotcha. Okay. So aspirational gets into, and for me, for example, I'm Catholic and Christian. That comes up in conversations a lot. And when you look at those shared values, I was connecting a customer, he pays me every month, and he does prayer worship material for pastors. And then I've got another guy who, we may be doing business, and he is, he does children's, and it's hard to describe, but he does similar things for kids. And he says, wow, we should connect. And there's a third person that I know just because I'm in this space. And so there's a shared value. And I guess that falls into that aspirational space.
We're all afraid to talk about aspirational values because all of us are a minority of one kind or another. And if I tell you too much about what I believe, you will eventually start disagreeing, right? Yeah. No two people will agree on everything.
No, and people, I would prefer to say, how many people am I going to attract because they're like me, than how many people I'm going to sell. If I'm on the other side and I'm, I guess an agnostic or an atheist, and you have an aversion to types like me, well, I'm okay with that. That doesn't offend me. But
yeah, and that's great.
With me, and I'll take that risk.
And it's better because it's a way to differentiate yourself. That we both know Wes Schaefer, and he started to, besides talking about sales all the time on Facebook, he started, maybe it's daily or weekly, putting a Bible verse up and his interpretation of it on Facebook. And he occasionally says, hey, if this content's not for you, that's your problem. Now go sell something.
Yeah.
And he's just very...
No, right. And I know he has a huge support for the military because that's his background. And so that's like, up front and center. But if you're one of those people that, you're kind of more on the, the Greenpeace side, it's like, well, I'm not going to probably do business with Wes. And Wes is okay with that, I'm sure. Absolutely.
For me, I talk about benefiting the world for the next generation. And I think if you're not on board, if you're like, I'm going to go do whatever I can to be happy in this life, and my great-great-grandkids can deal with the consequences, then you and I are not on the same page. Right. We should not work together. One of the transformative moments in my career was I used to be a salesman at another company, and I made a big sale, made a bunch of money, and it was an Asian candy company. And they were selling literally candy to children.
Is the word you're saying Asian?
Asian, yeah. Like Pocky, the little sticks with chocolate on them.
Yeah.
And I made a pile of money, and then I looked at this and I said, wait a minute. I just used the talents I was given to literally put more candy in the hands of children. Is that really what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah, I got you.
And I shortly thereafter stopped working for the company because I wasn't a good salesman anymore, because I didn't believe in what I was doing. And I realized we none of us have that much time on the planet, so we should be working with people and working for people to make their lives better in a way that actually is in alignment with our values. I don't want to sell candy to children. That's not that. I know, I'm just not going to. I'd rather go hungry. And so that was this moment where I realized, okay, well, so there we go. And I think when you share those stories.
And so that's the aspirational part of the shared values. Understood.
Yeah. So the leadership is the last part of tribe. And there we have respect, mastery, and generosity. Generosity is pretty obvious. It's both, are you giving without always taking? And then also, are you doing it in a way that people can see? On an impact framework webinar I did with a bunch of consultants, I said, how long have you guys been aware of my work? And I got answers from, just this webinar out to years and years and years. And I said, how many times have I asked you for money? And the answer was mostly 0, which is in and of itself a problem on my part. But it was still, I was clearly very generous with what I was sharing, and people felt that. So I think that's an important thing. And if you're not being generous in some fashion, then people are going to say, they're just, every time they talk to me, they're asking for money. And no one wants that. It feels terrible.
Yeah.
The mastery side of things is pretty clear. Just are you good at what you do? And then are people aware of it? Can they actually be aware of this is one of the greatest ones that there is about this? And then the respect side of things is, do you feel like this person respects you? And this is an area where I don't do great at because I too often build something and then I don't finish it and deploy it. And this is the example I give of how the framework tells you exactly what you're doing wrong. Where if I say, I'm going to get you this thing, and then you don't get someone that thing, that's not really showing respect.
So that's your reliability affect your the way people respect you.
Yeah.
And it's almost looking up to you or admire, right?
Yeah, and at least feel that they just respect you. Yeah, that it's someone who would be a good neighbor. At least a little bit. And
no, but also with respect, when people do that, for example, you probably wouldn't invite someone to speak at your event if they didn't think you were, the generosity maybe, but like if they didn't respect you, or if I didn't think you were a master of your, expertise, those would hurt you.
Yeah. And if you look at your competition, you can look at how are your competition establishing respect, mastery, and generosity, and demonstrating that in some way, either publicly or to their client base or the prospect base. And you can look at yourself and say, how could I do this better? How could I demonstrate mastery better? Last year at SuccessCon, I spoke, and my goal was to be the nerdiest talk at SuccessCon. And I ended up getting not that high ratings because one person in the room gave me a 2 out of 10 because they just didn't get it. But that's because my goal was I want to talk to the people who are the most advanced users and show them something new, which I did, and it was great. So that was mastery. In terms of respect, I don't know, because the people who were more junior, and I was very open saying, this is very advanced stuff. Don't worry if you don't get all of it. But still, they're like, wasn't that great for them. But for mastery, I did that one thing. But for anybody, you can say, okay, well, if my mastery is not great, either I'm not the best at what I'm doing, the answer is, okay, what are you the best at, or how can you get the best at what you're doing? Maybe you need to pivot a little bit and focus on something smaller, right? Like a couple years back, I had a client and they needed a membership site built, and so I sent them to you, and you built a membership site. And I could have done that. I'm certainly competent, but I'm not utterly amazing, and I'm not fast. And so I sent them to someone else who was. That's what they did. And even though that just ended up being a very functional thing. So yeah, here you go. Here's someone who is better than me. And I was on the plane coming back from a holiday a few days ago, and it turns out I was sitting next to a guy from is a management of a 200-person company, and they really need someone like us. But he needed more than I could offer. So I said, okay, here's these 2 people to talk to who are, and I didn't use this exact language, but when he looks into them, he'll say, wow, these people respect mastery and generosity. They are on it. He will be appropriately impressed. And hopefully he'll end up hiring one of them.
Gotcha. Well, pretty good. So
that's the impact framework.
Yeah, it seems pretty thorough. So I know you're kicking off, and since you did mention that sometimes you don't deliver on things, I'm assuming you really are going to deliver on this, because
yes,
you got me inspired. Okay.
Well, there.
I got action. I said, I got to call this guy, and I want to have him on my program, because it's good thinking for someone who's in this space, even if they don't go and make a permanent change to, adopt your methodology for everything they do. But what is it that people can do if they want to learn more about this?
redbeardconsulting.com/impact. That's where you're going to get this PDF of all this, which is going to be done this week. So by the time you watch this, it'll probably be done. And then also, once you go download that, you'll get the chance to go join the Impact Academy, which is my monthly thing where there's a webinar each month, a live webinar. There's video training on everything you came across right here. But then critically, there is expert and peer review of your materials and your strategy by your peers. So it'll be something like each month you'll get to submit either a marketing plan, a landing page, a strategy, something, either just a document or a video talking about, here's what I'm trying to do here, along with saying, here's where I think I'm strong, here's where I think I'm weak. I need to fix this. So that in my case, it might sound like, here is my funnel for plus this, for people interested in this, plus this app. Here's the content I have. I feel like I'm weak in this area and this area. What do you think? And then you'll have some other people go and give you feedback. But then also, what's coming up is that you, as part of the academy, you are required to go give feedback when we go through that cycle there. So you'll be applying the impact framework to your peers, to other entrepreneurs, and going and applying there. So you might say, I'll try feel sort of weak to you, but maybe your platform is great and your delivery is great. So you can go give me feedback and say, well, what I've found is this right here works better. So if you just copy what I did right here, your delivery is going to get really good. You don't got to design it yourself. Just do what I do right. It's going to make sense for you. And that way, because we all have different strengths and weaknesses, we can all grow together and go and advance.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's a group coaching community-ish thing, but before that, there's also the impact, which is you're saying it's a free ebook?
Yep, it's a free ebook.
Cool.
It goes into detail, but not overwhelming detail, just some detail in all the little pieces you saw right here. And that's enough to go through and flip through it, metaphorically speaking, or you can print it off if you really want to flip through it. Nice. And look at your latest sales campaign or your strategy or whatever, and just start checking off things and say, yeah, this right here feels really good. This one right here, I'm not really doing that. I don't have a plan for that. Like testing, split testing your ascension models. Right. I'm not doing that at all yet. I want to do it, but I want to do it later. And by going through the framework, you can wind up with a list of things to go do in order of what feels most important to you. So you'll have your checklist to go make sure that your next launch works better.
Okay. So when I publish this, we'll make sure to include that link. So it's redbeerconsulting.com/impact. And I'm sure there'll be more and more information in there for other things that they can find from you, right?
Yes. And there's a promo code for your people, which is Larry Jacob. That gets you $50 off the monthly price, and I'll just leave there. So that'll be there in perpetuity. So use promo code Larry Jacob at checkout, and that's if you buy the Impact Academy. The Impact Framework, the PDF is totally free.
Cool. Okay, so Impact Academy. So we'll make sure to include that as well. Well, hey, Brian, I really appreciate you, spending the time with me. You've gone over a lot of stuff, and I know it was helpful for me. Well, I really appreciate getting to share about this, and it feels like you get that feeling like this. I think this might be my life's work, or at least my next decade's work. Is taking this idea and sharing it, and what if? Because my thing is, I want to have a bigger impact on the world, right? For great-great-grandchildren I'll never meet. And the reality is that as one person, I can't do very much individually. And so what I'm looking to do is get this framework in the hands of thousands and tens of thousands of entrepreneurs, because when you look at all their customers, now I have a multi-million person reach, but only if I can help entrepreneurs go and have a greater impact and make the world better for their great-great-grandchildren. So very good. Thank you for expanding my reach. Okay. Take care. Take care.